This episode of One More Thing Before I Go is sponsored by Anchor.fm. When I first had the idea of making the show, my primary obstacle was deciding which platform to use for my recording, hosting, and distribution. Anchor made it so easy because they do all three things and much, much more. It's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast, whether you have 2 listeners or 2,000. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hello, friends, and welcome to One More Thing Before I Go, a podcast that celebrates the extraordinary lives of everyday people. I'm your host, Anthony Anderson, and with me today is my good friend, Joe Kann. He works with machine learning, which I'm sure he'll be able to get into a little bit if he wants to, but basically we describe him as the person who will eventually create Skynet and bring about the Terminators and the end of humanity. So, Joe, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. As far as Skynet goes, I don't think that'll be my department per se, but you never know.
A few more years, right?
A few more years, yeah.
All right. Exactly. Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. Well, as you said, my name is Joe. I grew up in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and I went to undergrad at Duke University. I studied computer science there and found my way down in Orlando, Florida, which is where I'm at now.
That's where we met as well, right?
Yes, this is where we met. As far as what I do, as you kind of alluded to, a little bit of machine learning stuff is definitely a passion of mine. I also tend to dabble in other things as hobbies, such as RPGs, tabletop games, couple of video games when I have time, and just occasionally trying to have creative outlets. I'm working on a board game and an app and just different things like that. So just things.
Yeah, so the app thing is something that we've kind of dabbled in together to explain to people who maybe don't have a huge understanding of RPGs and stuff. How would you describe that type of app to them?
Certainly. So as far as what the app does, it is an assistant tool. Not so much heavy on the machine learning aspect, but just something that I thought would be helpful for GMs or game masters out there. For those who don't know what a game master is, it's those that basically run the show of a tabletop RPG.
Can help craft the framework of the story that everybody's telling.
Exactly. So what this would be, as far as an assistant, it would help populate details that you've already defined kind of as a framework for the story itself. It'll start filling in details for NPCs or non-playable characters, different regions, creatures that you might encounter, and it kind of just helps build a procedurally generated story.
It gives you some sort of a framework for your creativity without having to come up with things off the cuff.
Exactly.
Right.
And a lot of times off the cuff, it's very hard to do. And you get stumped, and then it kind of stops and breaks the story as you tell it. So.
Interrupts the flow a little bit. Yeah. Awesome. Well, as you know, what we're trying to do with the podcast is just sit down with everyday, ordinary, normal people and find out what type of unique insight that they've gained into the world that might be worth sharing. So do you feel like you have something like that?
Certainly, yeah. I think growing up, I was always described as an old soul in a young body. I kind of what got me into machine learning was the type of patterns that it would pick up, and I was very much geared towards that as well from a young age.
Picking up on patterns with how the world works, or with like people in general, or what?
As many different kinds of patterns as I could try to understand. I mean, I know you understand consequences very early. You touch the stove when you're a child, it's hot, you let go very fast. But, understanding like, hey, if I, find something in this section, then I probably won't find it again there, but maybe somewhere else. And just different general patterns, understanding that, I don't know, just all over across the board. But something that I kind of started to learn at a younger age was accepting things, and accepting who I was, accepting who I am now, and accepting where I would like to go and grow. I think those are three different things that we could talk about, depending on how much
Sure,
time.
yeah.
But I think what I would say, one thing before I go, would be accept yourself. When you look back in your life, there's a lot of things that you can describe as this went wrong, this went right, I regret this, I regret that, what ifs. And you start to get upset at yourself. You start to get either angry or sad of just how things are now based on situations that has impacted your past.
Sure, and sometimes we even can apply that to ourselves, where we say, this went wrong, therefore I'm wrong. Yes. Right? I made a mistake turned into I am a mistake.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that I would say, if like you can look back and don't discredit any situations that happen in your life. That is a part of who you are. That's how you are able to grow from it. But knowing that those things happen, you shouldn't look back and say, well, that is regrettable, or that is, I wish it was different now because of XYZ reasons. I think if you can look back and say, wow, okay, that was unfortunate, or that was very fortunate. It made me who I am today, and people like you for who you are today. It's not like you are a worse person. You're not a mistake. These are things that people start to think about themselves, and ultimately exude that in the world, and that's not a good, healthy thing to do.
Sure. It sounds like you may be kind of like me and a firm believer in the butterfly effect, where any one thing, if you start to think back, man, if I could go back in my past and change this one thing, my entire life would be better. And if you really think about it, it could be so much worse because of making that one change. You don't know the ripple effects.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like the common cliche sayings of the grass is always greener on the other side, or if you make a small change, like you said, the butterfly effect, like you always think it'll be better, and you can never know what impacts that actually has. Like maybe it could be, let's say it's better, but now you aren't who you are anymore. You're a different person. You're possibly worse off, even though situationally it was better.
People, the situations you're in, the relationships that you have, maybe completely differently.
It all helps you grow,
yeah.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
But kind of moving from that transition to accepting who you are now. I think a lot of us do look back retrospectively in terms of what went wrong in our lives, but also just what is going on. What is wrong with our finances? What is wrong with that job that you have, or that relationship that you have? And those things happen, but you shouldn't dwell on the negative aspects of life, because life has so many good things to offer, and it's not fair towards yourself to just keep focusing on the turmoil that comes your way.
Sure, and to some degree, it's not fair to the other people in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But accepting is very hard, and it's something that it takes a lot of self-reflection, a lot of why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? And is it impacting my life negatively or for the better? People always say overthinking is bad, but I'm a firm believer of I overthink, but I do it in a healthy way where it's just you take the time to reflect, and that is a form of overthinking, but it's not a bad way. You say, why did I do that? And where is that reflecting for where I'm going? But accepting yourself and others, I mean, accepting others is part of the today. You don't have to agree with them. We're in a very divided state in our country. Even with neighbors, I mean, there's a lot of aspects that we create wedges unnecessarily.
We try to create this us versus them mindset.
We
You have to
always
either
do that.
100% agree with me or you're part of the them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying you need to agree with everyone's viewpoints or you won't have one yourself. But if you can accept the differences and you accept them for who they are, in addition to accepting yourself for who you are, then that is, I think, the first step towards loving. I think that is a part where you can say, I can show love because I've accepted who they are, not just this artificial, superficial love, in quotes. It allows the world to come together, even if you have totally separate viewpoints.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. So what you're then saying, the counterpoint would be that if you're not willing to accept people for who they are, then you can't truly love them.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think it's difficult. Again, you could have a totally opposite mindset as me, and that's fine. You know, there's 7 billion people on this planet as of now, and I guarantee at least half of them don't agree with me. Probably a lot more, in all honesty. But as far as, you know, having love for one another, I think you have to be able to say, this is who they are, and it's not bad. We all have room to grow. No one's perfect. But knowing that who they are and who you are, you matter. You matter to someone. You matter to your friends, your family, any loved one. You matter to strangers. You might not even realize it, but you can make a difference. You matter in some aspect. And by accepting that you aren't worthless, you can do something about that. You can do something with that information, knowing that, hey, if I just reach out to one person, you know, I might not see eye to eye, but I know who they are. I know well enough that we can get a cup of coffee. I can accept that finances are tight and maybe we can't even get a cup of coffee, but you know, we have internet as basic resource. We can even drive to and fro somewhere, like on the way home from work. Time can be tight though too, but it's a matter of just still understanding where people are coming from and not being upset about, oh, well, they haven't reached out to me, so I'm not going to reach out to them. Or, you know, it's like, no, I understand, like, life happens.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how to describe that, but it's just people can be busy, but accepting that as of right now, the season, whatever it might be good, it might be bad. But it's something that you can love your life. You can love yourself. You can love others without being angry about how different they are or how divided, you know, countries and the world could be. But I think knowing yourself, kind of reflecting on accepting how things were in your life isn't necessarily, it could be bad. Like I said, I'm not discrediting that whatsoever, but it made you who you are. And I think if you tend to look back and say, wow, look how far I've gotten, it's a much better view than, wow, looky, I'm still kind of wallowing in a self-deprecating way.
Sure.
Everyone has grieving seasons again, and I'm not trying to say that's bad. It's good to have grief in life, and it helps you grow. But accepting is the final stage of grief, which kind of segues into being able to love again. And I don't want to necessarily, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist by any means to say that those are the same definition of acceptance, but being able to move forward is important. And I guess continuing with the accepting who you can be, you can be stagnant, but I don't think that's worth accepting. You can choose certain aspects to accept. And, whenever I was a young child, I had this dream of becoming like a super scientist that would just change the world. And we all have dreams. I'm not saying discredit those even, but I need to accept where I am in life to know where I want to go. Those become goals.
What do you say to the people who have embraced maybe accepting who I am right now to the detriment of never really getting to the point of who can I be? They're stuck so much in this acceptance of this is just my lot in life and I'm stuck here, and they never actually move beyond that into growth, into something new.
Certainly. So there are aspects in the world that we don't have to accept. We don't have to accept human poverty or indecency or trafficking. Like, we don't need to accept that whatsoever. That's not right. But being able to accept who you are, you can at least reach out to others. And like we discussed, as far as my view of acceptance can lead to love, love is how you reach out. You can make that difference to one person, and your life is growing for the better.
It's true, yeah.
And that doesn't have to say, oh, I'm complacent with everything. I'm content with my dead-end job, for instance, or some aspect. But when you find the ability to accept, you can then move to love. And when you move to love, you do grow. Whether it's not necessarily a mindset or it's a community, you're reaching out, and that allows you to impact lives. And it might not seem like a big difference, but it certainly does make an impact.
So you're not saying necessarily to reignite your passion that you had as a kid for growing up to be an astronaut. Like, that's not this idea. It's in the moment, how can I improve myself, improve the people around me by just reconnecting in some way? Yeah. Okay.
I also think, though, accepting, is an astronaut an obtainable dream of mine still? Well, no. I mean, reevaluating and reflecting, you can realize you have potential no matter what, but focusing that potential does matter. I'm not going to try and adjust and change life to try to become an astronaut, and not everyone has the ability to become one. Your dreams might get shattered for health reasons, finance reasons, whatever it might be. And it's not necessarily accepting a lot in life, but it's knowing what else you can do. I don't need to impact the world, but can I impact my neighborhood?
Start small.
Start small and grow from there. And I think at least that makes it more of a goal than it does a dream, like a pipe dream versus a obtainable, hey, this can actually be achievable within the next week, month, year, 5 years, even 10 years. But it's not like, oh, I'm going to just, become an astronaut right off the bat. I need to maybe work on that, maybe work out more, actually go and focus in that aspect if I wanted to do that. And taking the pipe dreams and turning them into goals is a form of acceptance. It's what can I do now, and who can I impact? How can I help?
I may not be able to jump from point A to point Z this week, but I can take the next step.
Right. And I think that is sometimes people, myself included at times, but sometimes people try and have that dream and they instantly want to get the Z. It's that culture that we live in with that instant gratification to just, hey, I'm going to get this now because I can. Not always can you, but people immediately drop that dream if they can. So I think understanding who you are, what you can do now, it might not mean a whole lot, but it does mean a lot.
Yeah.
It might not look it, but it does impact.
Yeah, and if nothing else, you've got other people around you that are watching you.
Right.
That you just making the attempt.
Exactly.
Maybe making an impact on them as well. Yeah. So what would you say to people who are stuck? Maybe they've been able to accept, who they are or where they are now, or but maybe somewhere along the lines they've stopped. They're not willing to accept where they are now. They're not willing to, as you said, accept where they want to be. What would you say to those people who are just stuck?
I would say for that, accept one other person. Start with one other person. You can't move forward in life by yourself. And if you can accept yourself, I've done bad things in my life. I've done good things in my life, but I have to accept that and move forward knowing that. And it's not a level of regret. It's what made me me. And I've grown since then. Mm-hmm. But if you can accept someone else, doesn't have to be in a relationship, just a friend, just a stranger even. Just say, hey, we might not see eye to eye, but I'm willing to help you. I can lend you time, money, resources, whatever it might be. And that's where relationships start. Friendships, networking. I mean, that's where community kind of grows. And from there, you'd be surprised how much more you can do moving forward.
Yeah, and sometimes I know something I struggle with is I'm always ready to step up and help other people, but my big struggle is when I actually need help, then I'm not really willing to reach out and ask other people for help. So you're saying that would be another thing. Maybe you flip it and turn it around. I have to accept the fact that I need to be willing to ask for help. I need to accept the fact that I'm in a situation where I require help from others. And then actually being willing and courageous enough to actually, ask the people around me for help and still making a connection.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think, I think sometimes our pride gets in the way of acceptance, and whether it's viewpoints like my way is better than your way, or my way is the and best way and only way. Or even, like you said, I am too proud to accept that I'm in a bad situation and I'm not willing to reach out. That's another form of acceptance that you say, listen, I accept my situation. I know it's not great, but I can ask. I can reach out. And that's something that a lot of people also struggle with. And they want to keep it contained because they're afraid of what people will think. And that fear is dropped a lot quicker when you start to accept one another.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I had one more question for you. It seems like in my experience, and you've probably seen the same thing, a lot of times people who have trouble accepting any of these things that you're talking about, and you've talked about how that's the path moving toward loving other people. For some people, it seems like the next thing that they need to try to figure out is the acceptance part so that they can actually finally start to love themselves. Mm-hmm. And see themselves as being actually worthy of receiving love from other people. Sometimes we're so closed off. I don't deserve this. I deserve my lot in life. I'm a terrible person. All these things kind of build up these walls. So maybe how would you respond to that? How would you help those people get to the point where they can maybe start to finally love themselves, or allow themselves to actually be loved?
Certainly. I would say, as far as what we talked about already, acceptance can lead to love. And that's not just for others, that's for yourself. If you can take the time, just a little bit of time, to at least self reflect and know that you matter, that goes a long way. We all have broken aspects about ourselves. We struggle with different situations, we struggle with different disorders. All these aspects, we always look at that like through a funhouse mirror, and it distorts our view of ourselves.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that there are people out there in a very similar situation as you that maybe they are worse off and need help. And you actually might be that connection that could help each other grow.
Yeah, it's like jigsaw puzzle pieces.
Exactly.
Where none of them are cut the same way, and you're looking at yourself as I'm broken and I'm jagged,
I'm disfigured.
But I may be the exact piece to fit with
case.
Somebody else that needs those things. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, Jigsaw Puzzle is a very good example, where sometimes helping yourself is difficult, and that's why I said you can't live life, you can't move forward alone, and community definitely helps with that. But I think if you can reach out to one other person and accept them, it might be what you need to accept yourself. And it doesn't have to be a comparison thing. It's not supposed to be a compare-contrast aspect. Again, acceptance is not to create a wedge. It's to remove it. So it's, hey, I accept that there are differences. I accept that I'm in a worse place. I accept that I'm in a better place, and I'm willing to help because of that. I'm willing to accept, that right now life can be difficult, but I want to do better. I want to be better.
Yeah.
And doing that on your own is difficult. So I would say, community, therapy, different things like that, religion, different aspects can improve when you're with people. And it's not a catch-all. There's obviously there's a lot of aspects that we have to constantly remind ourselves that I'm not a mistake. And that constant reminder has to be self-care. It's a level of reflection to overthink, but in a good way. It is I'm going to wake up and remind myself that I matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People might not see me in that light yet because I haven't reached out to people. I haven't accepted that. But as of right now, I matter. And again, I might not see it, but if I can reach out to someone, one person, and I can impact their life the way they are impacting mine, and then we matter. Not we and they, or us and them, but we
together.
We matter. So,
yeah. I've heard Brene Brown explain it like this, that guilt says, I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And guilt allows us to learn from things. It's okay to feel guilty about something as long as it doesn't hang with us. Shame says, I am a mistake. And with shame, that's like this shroud that hovers over us and doesn't allow us to move on with our life. And so it's okay. Failure is sometimes the best teacher. It's okay to say, yeah, I may be screwed up in that moment, but I've learned from that and I'm a better person as a result of it. But if we're living in this, I am a terrible person because of this mistake that I made, we're never going to be able to live out, like you said, this acceptance, being able to love ourselves and love others well. Yeah. All right, Joe, well, I really appreciate you being on the show. That's all the time we have for now. But if you could summarize everything we've talked about into just some short little concise message, what would be the one more thing before you go?
One more thing before I go. I would say accept who you are. Accept that you matter. If you can do that, then you can accept others and learn to love. not just them, but yourself as well. And then you can continue to find community and reach out to a larger and larger space.
Great. I think that's stuff all of us need to hear. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. If you like what you heard, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your listening. You can even interact with me directly if you go to anchor.fm/One More Thing Podcast. That's the number 1 More Thing Podcast. There you can click on a link to send a voice message. That's a great way to give feedback or let me know if you too would like to be a guest on the show. It's that easy. Special thanks goes out to BigFish_music for providing our theme music and transitions. If you like what you heard, go check him out on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for listening to One More Thing Before I Go. Until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others.